Hello, this is Jenny-Jaymes Gunn. I am a community advocate here in Charlotte, North Carolina for LGBT women's rights with the National Organization for Women, gun sense laws with Moms and Men Action, and anything that extends equity to all. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. This is Barb Bacon. I'm a community advocate here in South Charlotte. Generally, I drive people around and to doctor's appointments, and I'm getting ready to have my sign-up list for taking people to vote. And today I drove a friend to Duke, so name it. I probably will try to help do it. So my buttons, once again, are I believe in health care for all. I've got some people that don't believe in Medicare for all. Gun violence, let's get some control of guns. And Black Lives Matter in honor of our friend Joel that passed away last year. So that's it, guys.
Hey, I'm Christian Cano. You're the co-host. My buttons are Moms and Men Action, gun sense legislation, healthcare for all, Medicare for all, and also in my heart, Black Lives Matter on behalf of Joe Oldham, who's a guest of ours who passed away last year. That's it. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for watching our Coffee Pan Dulce Show every week. Don't forget, you can watch us visually on our video podcast platforms on Facebook and YouTube. But you can also listen to us on your favorite audio podcast platforms like Apple, Amazon, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and all of the other ones that your favorite, whatever your favorite is. Once again, thank you for watching us on Coffee Pan Dulce. We'll dance out. Great music.
Hello, everybody. It is it's the third Wednesday of the month, isn't it?
It is. Wow.
It's really flowing along. We have a little Tejano music going on here, which is kind of the theme of the show. But this is Coffee Pan Dulce, and this would be October 19th already, right before early voting. Like we are.
That's right.
We are here. Like we've talked about this all year in different shows, and we had a politics show earlier in the year, right before the primaries, and now we've arrived. We've pulled in, and this is the last home stretch. So the guests that we'll have on tonight are in local political races, and so even though it is a locally based show on this particular subject, it has application because there's people voting in midterms in all 50 states this year, and clearly a lot on the line for either side of that political aisle. And so thanks for coming, guys. And Christian, if you want to introduce our guests.
All right. Excellent. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us on Coffee Pan Dulce. As Jenny said, I'm Christian Cano, one of your co-hosts, along with Jenny Gunn and Barb Bacon. We do want to thank you for joining us, for those who join us on Facebook Live, but also those who join us on YouTube, and then the thousands who now listen to us on your favorite audio podcast platform, whatever it is. All right. So as Jenny said, this is our Politics show number 4, and we have 2 wonderful local guests. We're actually based in Charlotte, North Carolina, at least the 3 of us, the hosts right now. And we're very excited to have 2 individuals that are actually running for North Carolina Superior Court. And correct me if I'm getting this incorrect. North Carolina Superior Court Districts 26A and 26B. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Good job. Judge Best gave me some talking points before the show started. Before we do that, we do want to salute to our neighbors, whatever you're drinking this morning. I'm drinking coffee and tea. And then we also want to thank our producer, sponsor, and supplier here in Charlotte, North Carolina, Manolo's Bakery. This is a concha. Manolo's Bakery here on Central Avenue. Sorry, Barb, they didn't have any pigs. All they had was these little donuts, and so I would have eaten it anyway. So just All right. So as Jenny mentioned, we do have a politics show. We try to have it before a primary or before an election, and we've had guests from all around the country running for office. But this one, we're very excited because we have two guests that are actually local guests, or at least they're running in races here. But we're going to be talking about some other shows later on. And so when we get to that point, the judges, you're welcome to drop off, or if you just want to listen, you're welcome to stay on. But we'll be talking about Florida, Ohio, Georgia, Texas, Pennsylvania, Arizona. For those who watch us, our top four markets are number 1, California, number 2 is Florida, number 3 is North Carolina, and number 4 is Texas. So maybe we'll get some Wisconsin people trolling on us. All right. So let's introduce the individuals that we have here. We'll start with who would like to go first. Briefly introduce yourself and the race that you're running for. We'll flip a coin. Right. Judge Best, if you want to go first, and then Judge Curtin.
Yeah, that'll be alphabetical, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Kimberly Best, candidate for Superior Court Judge, District 26B, and I am currently a Superior Court Judge, having been appointed by Governor Roy Cooper in December to the Superior Court seat, and I am seeking to keep my seat. And I am glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
And I am Donald Curitan Jr. I am currently a district court judge, have been one for almost 12 years. I'm running for District 26A. And this will be my first go around at trying to go up one level to Superior Court. So I'm looking forward to the conversation and hoping I can answer the questions as best as possible.
Well, excellent. Thank you so much. And Jen, you want to start off asking a question? Because I know I have a question. Barb, if you have a question, and then we'll let the judges kind of talk freely, however you want to do this.
Sure. I'll lead off, and I'll ask this to both candidates. What is the major reason why you're running for Superior Court Judge? And maybe 1 or 2 reasons why you jumped into the fray, so to speak, or what inspired you to either make that as a lateral move or an upward move, or however that should be termed.
So, well, we both have been district court judges for quite some time, and I know Judge Best will give her reason on her own. For me, we had a Superior Court judge in this particular district that resigned abruptly on July 1. And so with that resignation, there was an immediate discussion about whether or not I should fill that seat, since I live in District 26A. And, after a while, I think anytime you've done something, you've garnered whatever level of experience, you want to make sure that you are continuing to push yourself and improve yourself, but also improve the system. And sometimes it just means doing that in a different area, different level. So that's where we are in terms of Superior Court. I know I have the experience, being that, I've been on the bench as long as I have, but also as a practicing attorney, being at Superior Court as well. I was looking forward to this challenge. And so that's why I'm in the fray, as you said.
And for me, I'll just ditto what Judge Curitan said. But I've been a judge for 15 years. Well, I'm just going to round up to 15 years, 14 years, 10 months, serving 13 years, 11 months as a district court judge, and then appointed in December. For me, it's a continuation of service to the community. It's at a different level. It's a natural progression. I've served in every possible courtroom as a district court judge, as Judge Curitan has as well. But it's continuing to take my lived experience to the Superior Court bench. So it's more of the same, yet it's different, because in Superior Court, you only focus on civil matters, $25,000 and up. Criminal matters, your major felonies. And then you have some what we call special 2.1 cases. Those are cases that involve important constitutional questions. And so for me, all of the experience that I have comes together right there in Superior Court. You have to be able to maneuver in every single one of those areas. And because I've been in every single possible courtroom, plus prior to joining the bench, I practiced immigration, federal criminal defense, abuse, neglect, and dependency, and I'm a former magistrate. So I've done pretty much everything possible. So it's a natural culmination of all of my experience and being able to take my experience on the bench as well as my lived experience off the bench to Superior Court with me to make a difference in our community.
Question. When I first moved to North Carolina many years ago, I got my ballot, and I'm sure people, whatever state you live in, and I saw district court, Superior Court, Supreme Court. What is the difference between the district court and the Supreme Court? I mean, the district court and Superior Court. What is the difference between those two? I know Supreme Court in your states, but what is the difference between the district court and the Supreme Court? For those who may not know.
Just you want to take that since you started speaking about it. All right. So district court. So the base level is magistrates. So those magistrates who have certain levels of training can hear certain types of proceedings in a trial court setting, but most people think small claims, but they handle some other matters. But then you go up to district, and district is where we call it the people's court. That's the one that you mostly think of when you come to court. So traffic tickets, DWIs, domestic violence related criminal charges, any kind of misdemeanor type offense, as well as family court. So that encompasses some child support, child custody, divorces, equitable distribution, that kind of thing. And then we have civil domestic violence for restraining orders. We have 4D child support enforcement courtroom. We have juvenile court that handles both abuse, neglect, and dependency matters, which is when children are placed in DSS custody. And we have to, talk about reunification or where the kids need to go after that, as well as delinquency matters for kids. All of this is in juvenile court. So when they get criminal charges, and what most people don't know is that we handle cases as small as misdemeanors to murder charges in juvenile court. So I had to preside over a involuntary manslaughter trial in juvenile, or high-level sex offense cases in juvenile court. We also handle emancipations, children who are seeking to be emancipated from their parents, judicial bypasses, when teenagers who are seeking to terminate their pregnancy, but don't want their parents to have to sign off on the consent for various reasons. Sometimes they've been kicked out of the homes. Sometimes they have, they know that there might be a threat of violence, other factors that might come into play. And then civil. So civil handles a lot of landlord-tenant cases, anything under $25,000. So again, it really is people's court. And Judge Best and I have handled every single one of those types of cases that I've named. And there's some more that I haven't factored in. Superior Court is one level up. So as she indicated, felony matters, misdemeanor appeals. So if you are found guilty or plead guilty in district court, you can appeal to Superior Court. And then civil matters with disputes over $25,000. And this is where we're dealing mostly with these jury trials. So anytime you read the paper about somebody having some big jury trial for a few weeks, those are the types of cases we would hear in Superior. So excellent. I know that's a long-winded, but I wanted to make sure everybody.
No, that was a very good explanation.
That was great.
Yeah, because I don't think, I can just share with you, growing up, when I grew up, there's this kind of mystery about the courts, what a judges, and you almost are kind of afraid because you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know, what they, and so I know there's a lot of marginalized communities that don't understand that the importance that judges play in their daily life, and even if they're not in court, they play a role in your community and how things go about. So, absolutely. Barb, do you have a question before we go back to Jen?
I do. I think it's more of a general question. I really have had no experience with judges. Thank God, I guess. But so do you have running mate or opposition from the other side? And what do you think the key issues are? Why are you better or worse? I mean, is that how it
Hey,
works?
Barb, before they answer, I do have to say full disclosure. We invited everyone that we thought was in a competitive race, and the two individuals that are running against these two candidates, we won't mention their name because I don't believe in mentioning someone's name for them.
Right.
So, judges, if you just, unless you want to mention their name, but we learned on one of our shows, don't mention the person's name because then you're doing it for them. So, if you want to answer that question.
But I just want, because
Sure.
they're on the show, you're the better candidate. Why? That's what I'd like to know.
For me, lived experience, lived experience and all of my experience. I'm not a one-trick pony. Once again, and it's not that, I mean, because you have people who say, oh, I have the experience doing this, I have experience doing that, but did you do it well? So not only have I practiced in all of those areas, but I did it well. If I hadn't, I wouldn't be on the bench for 15 years, right? You would have heard about it by now. Someone would have tried to remove me from the bench. And not only that, but my lived experience. So for me, I'm a native of Detroit, Michigan. I've lived here for 25 years. And I often tell people about my lived experience. I grew up with a little brother who's autistic, severely intellectually disabled, and severely emotionally impaired, all from lead poisoning. There were no resources. So I literally grew up in this house. I would sometimes go to high school with, and by the way, my high school was the first high school with metal detectors in Detroit back in the 80s. But I would go to school sometimes with 2 and 3 hours of sleep because of the medication cocktails, the psychotropic medication cocktails my brother was on. He would stay up all night. He couldn't sleep. And then he would make soothing sounds to try and get him to go to sleep. So, for example, I had a case with a young man who had been in jail for 3 weeks. He was arrested while at Myers Park High School. This was before Raise the Age, for assaulting another student. And I noticed he was rocking back and forth. And those in your audience who aren't familiar, some people may be familiar with some of the signs of autism, but he kept rocking back and forth. And what I was able to tell the attorney was, I think he needs to be assessed for autism. And it's really it's because it's soothing to them, but that's because of my lived experience. When you talk about treatment courts, and both of us have presided in treatment courts, talk about, I have family members who have had substance use disorders. I have family members, of course, my little brother, but, other family members who suffer from mental illness. So it's not just me taking up, the mantle, so to speak, or the baton, so to speak, and trying to add it on my resume and say, yeah, I did this. No, I did it, but I also lived it. Mm-hmm. And I also have friends. If I didn't live it myself, I have friends who went through it themselves. And that's the unfortunate part. But that's what makes me the better judge, is that I can relate on, to everyone that comes into my courtroom to some degree, not everybody, but to some degree, because of my lived experience.
Okay.
Excellent.
And yeah, I certainly agree. So we both do have, as Krista said, have opponents. And we run in partisan races. So when we first ran for judicial seats, it was nonpartisan. And before then, some years just prior, it had been partisan, but they went to nonpartisan because I think everybody perceived that to be the more appropriate thing to do when selecting judges. And then in 2016, when it really started getting heated up in terms of the friction that we're having politically, it went back to partisan. In 2018, the districts changed to what they are now. So beforehand, Superior Court in Mecklenburg County, there were 3 different districts. And so all 8 or however many resident judges we had were put within those 3 districts. And district court judges ran countywide. Well, they changed it to where district court judges and Superior Court judges would run in 8 different sub-districts based off of where we live. In some instances, they try to double bunk us, meaning they would have judges running against one another. And in Judge Best's scenario, they had written her out of her seat. They were essentially saying she was going to have to move.
Oh.
So in that 2018 election, the person whom I say I'm running against right now chose to run against me solely because, one, she had run multiple times and had been unsuccessful. And then secondly, she knew that this had been written for her specifically as a particular party affiliation. And I'm not saying this because I'm trying to say something negative. It's because she acknowledged it. The party people acknowledged it. So when that happened, obviously I was very taken aback by it because not only was I understanding the reasoning behind it, but she had also said to me directly that I believe that you are in the place where you're supposed to be. You have a gift for this and you really care about people. Now, I'm not making this up. This is what she said to me. So when we talk about the differences in terms of who's better, I think people can settle for certain people merely because they might be doing an okay job. But if you have the opportunity to take something or have someone who is doing an excellent or superb job over somebody who's just doing an okay job, that's the person you would want, right? I mean, there is a difference. I believe that there are moments when I'm on the bench and I'm having conversations with people, and I know that it is some degree an out-of-body experience. Like, I can't explain how I'm able to connect with people at certain times. I've seen Judge Best do it as well, because again, we have these lived experiences, and we're connecting all of the dots from being in court and what we've seen in and out of court. And so, I take this one example. I had only been in family court for 3 months. This was 3 months after getting on the bench. And I remember I had a case where a child was being asked to testify about where this child was going to live. And at first I didn't really feel comfortable about it, but I just remember her coming in, and I get down off of the bench and I go and sit beside her. And so we're having this little conversation about what she's about to do. And after she gives me the okay, I said, well, you want a pinky swear on it? And she says, so she smiles, she says, yeah. So she pinky swears on it. Now, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, this is just the way I'm hoping that she understands what I'm saying, because here I am, I'm a scary, tall black guy with this, big robe, black robe on. I didn't have all this facial hair at the time, and I looked a little bit younger. So I was hoping maybe she would appreciate that interaction. And an attorney came to me years later, and he said, I was in the courtroom when you did that, and I'll never forget that. And it completely changed my perspective on what judges do and how they connect with people. And I'm not saying that to just, try to exalt myself in any kind of way, but I do know that we see things differently. And it matters. And that child was not of our same race. It wasn't as if I was able to do it just merely because of our race. It's because we see things differently. And that's extremely important when you have judges, especially at the trial court level, on the bench.
Excellent. Well, we are going to take our first break, and we'll probably only take two, Jen, if you don't mind on this one. We're going to take our first break. We'll be right back in about 30 seconds on Coffee Pan Dulce. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for watching our Coffee Pan Dulce show every week. Don't forget, you can watch us visually on our video podcast platforms on Facebook and YouTube, but you can also listen to us on your favorite audio podcast platforms like Apple, Amazon, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and all of the other ones that your favorite, whatever your favorite is. Once again, thank you for watching us on Coffee Pan Dulce. We'll dance out. Howdy, everyone. I'm Christian Cano with the Coffee Pan Dulce Show, based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. I just want to remind everyone that we have less than 22 days, 22 days to vote on November the 8th. And I just want to urge everyone to get out there and vote. If you're not registered to vote, you can actually register, I believe, day of in North Carolina during early voting. But also, please remember to grab your neighbor, grab a tia, a tío, a mija, a mijo, grab someone who's eligible to vote and registered to vote, and take them out to vote. This election is so important, as every election is. But remember, you only have about 22 days left. So there's a link that's going to be on the bottom here. Follow that link if you need more information about getting out to vote. And once again, please get out to vote like your family's future depends on it, because our families do. Thank you. Get out to vote. Well, welcome back. And I do want to thank Judge Best and Judge Curitan. Did I say that right?
That's correct.
All right. Judge Best was giving me talking points before. I am terrible at names. That's why I grew up. I grew up in Texas. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. You know, so you don't have to remember names. Jen, you want to ask another question?
Yeah, I think background and lived experience, especially in a courtroom, probably matters a lot, whether you're a practicing attorney or a judge, because it can shape the questions you ask and the questions you don't ask. And something like the story with the young person there definitely probably made a huge impact for that child as well. And based on that, what do you think the most important thing about being a judge to you is? Like, what inspired you to even want to be a judge?
Good question, Jen.
Yeah. You want to take this one first?
30 seconds.
I mean, I can. I mean, because for me, and ironically, I actually posted something similar. I have this card on my desk in my office, and it was given to me in 2011. And this was it was a really tough year for me. We're both certified juvenile judges. And this year I had maybe two infant deaths, or young, toddler deaths that were on the news, and a near death that likewise was on the news. And these individuals had other children that eventually came into custody. Well, this one young lady, her child came into custody, and there were, let's just say the facts were that she was operating in disbelief that her boyfriend actually murdered their child. And it wasn't that she didn't believe it. It was, I just can't believe this is happening to me. And so when the police went to question her, I don't believe you. I have to talk with him. And for all intents and purposes, her other children ended up being placed in a DSS custody. Her attorney at the time, who was actually now the managing attorney for DSS, represented her. And after a couple of weeks, we were able to return her children to her home, with her. And she sent me a card, and she said that, she thanks the Lord for me. And then she went through her spiel. And when I read that, I remember posting, this is why I do what I do. I do it not to say I'm a judge, not because I want the power or perceived power. I actually want to do it to help people, to be able to connect with people. And for whatever reason, we connected. And this woman had a spirit. I mean, she eventually, told her boyfriend, after she talked to him and he admitted it, okay, she said, I forgive you. She said, but you have to pay. There's a price to pay. And that's really what we do as judges is yes, we can show grace, but we also have to ensure the safety of the community. And hey, you have to pay sometimes.
Yeah. Excellent. Judge Curtin, do you want to answer that, or?
Yeah, this is very similar in the sense that, especially being in juvenile court. I mean, Judge Best and I, we've seen some of the worst of circumstances for people. And so you really have to have a heart for people, have a heart for the community, and want to see people be their very best self. That's what I try to, we're both also recovery court judges, where we work with people who have a history of substance abuse. Sometimes there are mental health disorders involved. And a lot of times I will tell them, look, I love you. I want you to be the very best version of yourself. I'm not here to judge, ironically judge you. But we do have to address the reasons why you are here. and we can't overlook those. And so I'm not asking for you to go out here and be Mr. and Mrs. Perfect. How can I say that? I'm a human being. I certainly have my flaws, but ultimately we're trying to improve ourselves. And so, this has given me the most, to have this be our job and also give us the platform that we have to do this. It is one of the best things in the world. It's a challenge at times, for sure. But neither one of us have done this because we just say we want to be a judge. And I know I've heard that from people. That's my dream, to be a judge. Look, I wanted to be an entertainment lawyer before when I was in law school. When I graduated, I worked I interned at a record label and a TV studio. So this was the furthest thing from my mind. But at some point, it became apparent to me that this is where my gifts were going to be best utilized. Mm-hmm. And so we could accomplish these types of goals. And granted, we fall short at times. I acknowledge that as well. Well, I'll fall short. I'll speak for myself. I won't talk about that. I'll fall short. But ultimately, I think people recognize that this is where my heart is and what we're trying to accomplish.
Wonderful. Jen, you have a question? I have another question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. All right. Go ahead, Barb. You go first.
I just wonder, both of you judges, I guess what I don't understand is the shootings by these young kids. I don't understand it. Number one, all the guns, it just blows my mind. And I know we are not going to solve the problem, but can you help me try to understand why you pick up a gun and shoot somebody? That I understand some of it's related to boyfriend, girlfriend things, but do you see a root cause in this? And do you guys get involved in this? Every time I hear it, I'm a news junkie and I listen to the news in the morning when I'm getting up and starting my day. Every time I hear about another shooting, I'm like, oh my God, I have to change the channel. It just concerns me. And they don't live in this state, but young nieces and nephews, and it just scares me.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to touch that one, but that's a great question.
Just bet you have anything you want to say?
I could say a lot, but I can't say anything. What I can tell you is that, unfortunately, once again, me being from Detroit, that's what I grew up with. Once again, metal detectors in my high school in the 80s, murder capital of the United States. That is a normal that no child should have.
Yeah.
The access to weapons is the issue. I don't know how else to say it. The inability to solve problems without using a weapon is the issue. I don't know. You can't arrest your way out of it.
Yeah.
We tried that, right? We tried that in the 80s. It doesn't work. It hasn't worked. I know that the city has the violence interrupters program currently, and they are seeing some success with being able to mediate disputes. I don't know if you need more of that. I know that income plays a part. Substance use disorders play a part. Mental health and access to weapons, or substance use disorders and access to weapons. But there's also, I became aware of a loophole, so to speak, as well, with a restraining order case that I had, where a young man who has no record, but he sold guns on the internet. He would go and purchase the guns and then he would sell them. And when I told him he had to get rid of his guns, he said, well, I've sold all 5. I can only have 5 at a time before I have to actually get a federal license to be an actual dealer. And I had never heard of that. And so you have this gentleman who nobody knows is selling weapons, albeit he can possess them legally, he can sell them legally. but nobody knows who he's selling to, and there's no one to ensure that he's not selling to someone with a mental health issue or substance use disorder, or an otherwise disqualified individual who can't possess a weapon.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So
that was a very good question. Go ahead, Jen. You're unmuted. Jen, you're muted.
That always helps. I've done 200 of these shows. I still forget to unmute myself every once in a while. But I do know, Barb, there's a couple of things they can't answer, because if it's about constitutional things or how they would rule or anything like that, they can't do that, because otherwise, if a case lands in their courtroom, they would have to recuse themselves of that case in case it was how they would rule on something like that. Like, so we do have to be careful. Judges are an exception to the rule on certain questions, versus somebody like a state senator or a mayor or somebody like that, where they don't make decisions.
But you know what, Jenny, Barbara's
getting
question.
Worse. It's getting worse, and it's just scary.
Yeah.
Oh, I 100% agree. As somebody that grew up in a military family, where my dad's a retired military officer, and I grew up with guns. I grew up shooting guns when I was probably shorter than the rifle. You know, like probably the first time I touched a gun or got trained on a gun, I was probably about 6 or 7 years old, and I was out on my family's land shooting like 410s and shooting it like little Coke cans and stuff like that. You know, they were teaching me the right way to load a gun, operate a gun, the ethical parts of it, and all that. And I think with any social issue such as murder and guns and violence, or the misuse of drugs, prescription drugs as well, it's really about transparency and accountability. And when you have 400 million guns out into the marketplace that we know of, how are you accountable with that many guns when we have more guns than Americans? So there's a lot of issues there. It's like the little Dutch boy when he's putting his fingers in the dam. You run out of fingers at some point, no matter how good your law enforcement or justice system is. The overwhelming propensity to be able to own a gun, how easy it is in certain states to buy a gun, or in the case of certain loopholes in federal and state law, where you can go to a gun show, you can walk out with an AK-47, you know.
But Jen, don't you think that Barbara's question is a perfect example of education that we all need to do with each other about issues in general?
Right.
So for an example, I know Barbara and I live in the same neighborhood, not far from each other, and Jenny lives not far from us. On our side of town, that's like the big political rhetoric. The murder rate's going up, and it's because Democrats are in charge, and because of this, you know, it's all that rhetoric.
Right.
Same stuff happened with the crack epidemic. But when it became opioids, it's let's get them help. Let's get them, you know, it's get them. So on this side of town, those type of political rhetoric things work well on this side of town, because we don't often understand. Well, one of the reasons why some people have challenges or rob is because they can't eat, you know, or, I mean, I'm not saying it's that simple, but I'm just saying is that, you know, there are a lot of things that occur when a city is growing as fast as we are growing, and some of us are prospering and some of us aren't. And so I do think that's an important question, because I assure you the competition between these two candidates here is saying that exact same thing to their people. The reason that I need to get in office is because I'm going to lower death rates, as if though we don't care about guns, and, you know, like suddenly they have the monopoly on that. So I do think that's a very important question.
Well,
Barbara,
I just meant more from a judge's perspective. You know, what's going on? Why is it increasing? I really just don't understand. I don't come from a family that has anything to do with guns. And when they heard I got a gun because I lived by myself and I was scared, you did what? It was like I was the scourge of the family, you know. But hey, I was in Texas for a while. Everybody has guns, you know, so it didn't bother my neighbors, and they were happy to help me. But I'm out in the country all by myself. I'm going to have a gun because I didn't even know anybody. So anyway, I just wanted to.
That was a great question.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know if y'all want to comment on that or.
Yeah, well, I definitely. So okay. I was just asked this recently. What are some of the things that people are asking me or speaking to me about when I go out here and we're campaigning? And one of the things is gun violence. That's probably number one, and safety of the community. And secondly is what are we doing to help people? So it seems odd that you would have those in tandem because they seem to be politically in such contradiction of one another. Because it's either we lock everybody up and get these people off the street, or we're trying to, we're being overly liberal and helping everybody. And, I've heard all kinds of things. You read all kinds of things of how they try to categorize people who they believe to be liberal. And what they fail to realize when I have sit down conversations with people, and I'm explaining to them the processes that occur within the court system, they walk away understanding that this is much more nuanced than what they thought. Mm-hmm. And so to your point, your question is, okay, well, do I believe I have an understanding of reasoning why it happens? And Judge Best highlighted a great deal of them. But it is that complicated. So for instance, I think you drum this down. We're both part of Race Matters for Juvenile Justice. So we've done a lot of training about what are the root causes of situations that we're seeing, right? So you look at the root cause of violence, period, whether it's intimate partner or somebody you know in your neighborhood, or if it becomes quote unquote random violence. It is one, a lack of value of self. Right. So if you don't value yourself a particular way, then you're not going to value the next person that way. Secondly, it could be that I have been harmed. And so as a result of me being harmed, I am now going to take out my aggression on you. Well, then that lies another issue. Why is it that you believe that you have to elevate that level of aggression to that point where you feel like you have to shoot somebody? Either you don't have that quote unquote switch to turn that anger off, or maybe you have been harmed in such a violent way before that you don't know any different. Or maybe it's because it can be a combination of things. We know that children, their brains are not fully formed until the age of 25. And I know some people say, well, that's an excuse. Well, that's a reality. How many times have you either as a child or you've talked to a child and you've had to repeat something?
Well, we don't let them rent a car.
Right. Right. A million times.
I mean, that's not why, but.
Right. and you're like, I just told you this. Why can't you figure this out and do this? And for whatever reason, they're not processing it the same way as adults do. Well, now you throw a gun in the mix. And if you haven't held a gun before, you know that it is the most power that you will ever feel in your hand, aside from possibly being a judge or somebody in one of these higher levels where you know that the stroke of your pen can change somebody's life tremendously. A gun has that much power. And you put it in the hand of a child, this is what you're going to get. Mm-hmm. And so, it's you got to get guns off the street, it's a black market because that's where they're buying them from people. Mm-hmm. You got to teach them how to resolve conflict. You got to have better structure in the home. You got to have educational resources, financial resources. You got to provide some kind of level of self-worth to them so that they're able to go out in the world and feel like I am about something. I've had children tell me, and I've asked them, where's your level of anger right now? On a scale of 1 to 10. And they tell me it's 11.
Whoa.
Or, I smoke weed because I can't. I've lost so many people in my life. Everything is so hard. I really don't want to live right now. And these are 13 and 14-year-olds.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, those are the people who have guns in their hand. Those are the people who are killing folks. And again, so we have to look at each case uniquely to figure out what's going on with that person. But at the macro level, as a larger scale issue, these are some of the things we're having to assess.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and take our second break, and we'll be right back in Coffee Pan Dulce. This last break that we're taking talks about a show that Jenny leads. It drops about 30 minutes after this one. It's called Two Queers in a Truck, and she really lets her hair down. So if you want to talk about guns or DeSantis, she'll talk about it. So we'll be right back on Coffee Pan Dulce.
Up next is Two Queers in a Truck with Jenny and Christian. And hope you guys tune in. We'll see you in about 15 to 20 minutes. Thank you. Bye.
All right, well, welcome back. And so, judges, listen, this has been a wonderful conversation. This is the first time that we've actually had a politics show that we have talked so casually. And it is so wonderful. I can't speak for the other co-hosts, but it is so wonderful to see a human being as a judge.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I know that sounds, I don't know how that's going to come across with people who watch this, because I have, people who want them to be, like this, but it's just so wonderful to see people who are human beings, because as a Latinx man, our young people are 70% Black and brown young people in Charlotte. And it's important that they have people who oversee them if something happens, that understand where they come from, or I don't know how am I going to word that right. Jen, you want to save me on that one?
I guess young people, especially Generational Z, that are young and old enough to vote, but maybe don't have the lived experience that the majority of us on this call have, is, that 18 to 30-year-old sweet spot is part of being a community show. We have an obligation to talk about politics, but in a different way, to introduce people that they maybe have not come across in their life yet. They know that judges exist. They know mayors exist, so on and so forth, but be able to see the human side of who they're voting for, and also understand how important it is to vote, and that local politicians, and I include judges especially, y'all have probably the greatest impact on lives, more so than somebody in Washington, D.C., debating some kind of, tax bracket thing about some nebulous corporation or offshore taxation or whatever. That your local officials on every level are people that can rewrite zoning things and settle lawsuits. And there's so many things.
Pass a non-discrimination ordinance.
Yeah, I mean, pass
really.
like we did last year in Charlotte and in the county of Mecklenburg. But all these things, including what y'all do on a daily basis, directly affect hundreds, if not thousands, of people every day. And so, just the geography of the district that you're running for, does it cover mostly Mecklenburg County, or where does your boundaries lie for both of your seats?
I'll let Judge Curitan go first with 26A, and then I'll follow up.
Okay.
So 26A starts at precinct 236. So that's the top of Mid Hill. Think Albemarle Road as it goes down 2427. That's the top of 236. It then goes to Matthews, and it cuts, I guess that would be west towards Old Providence, Myers Park.
That's us, Barb.
Eastover.
Yeah.
So here's the tricky thing with this. When they drew this district, like I said, this is a uniquely drawn district. And so there will literally be someone across the street from you possibly that is in a totally different district. So I strongly encourage everyone to go and take a look on the North Carolina Board of Election website. Okay. Put in their information, find out if they can vote for in 26A. But if you live in Mecklenburg County, it would be either or, right? Is that correct? Is that a fair statement? So correct. It would be either 26A or 26B. Correct. And
for this election cycle.
Yeah.
For this election cycle. I'm sorry, Judge Best. I didn't mean to do your. But this is what I'm confused about, and I know Jenny's going to mute me here in a second, but. But do you still do cases for everyone in Mecklenburg County? Yeah. So that doesn't make any sense. Yeah. So this is another thing you asked about a different district and criteria. All right.
So as a Superior Court judge, you would be one of 8 resident judges that are essentially are housed in Mecklenburg County. And so for 6 months out of the year, you will only hear cases in Mecklenburg County. But Superior Court judges are part of a larger division, Division 5, that goes all the way to Cherokee West and as far northwest as Watauga County. So we can hear cases, Judge Best has already done this, hear cases in the mountains and other areas of our state. If you're just a district court judge, you only stay in Mecklenburg County unless we get called for some special hearing out of the county.
So I'm going to say this. So if you live in Mecklenburg County, which is where we are actually at, or at least most of us are here, vote for one of the 2, or call your friends who live in the other district to vote for one of them, because they will have an impact regardless of where you live in Charlotte. Is that a fair statement to say, Jen?
Yes.
All right.
Very much so. I mean, that's one of the reasons, would be solicited for people that were in not only competitive races, but races that also maybe, the public's not as educated on, like Superior Court judges and what the difference is between a Superior Court judge and a district judge. Because for most people, they hear judge, they usually think one of 2 things. Whether it's lived experience, they've been in front of a judge, or they've seen something on TV, like on CSI or something like that. And that's a whole other ball of wax. But as far as closing out this segment, is there anything that you want to let the voter know, as far as something you want to say, like a mission statement or a core part of your candidacy, or anything like that?
For me, I just simply want to say that I am the candidate with the superior experience, the best choice. Vote for Kimberly Best to remain a Superior Court judge in 26B. Mother, lived experience, and I am fair and just. Zip codes 28277, 28270, parts of 28210, parts of 28226. So that's the best way to describe the district. And we were part of a lawsuit to challenge the same districts at the district court level, and it's still pending at the Supreme Court of North Carolina. And people really should consider and really should be voting for their judges. There is that pending case of Moore v. Harper at the United States Supreme Court right now that can possibly determine whether or not a legislative body can basically draw a district and the Supreme Court of that state, whether or not they actually have a say in federal elections.
Excellent. Judge Curtin?
And when I first ran for office in 2010, and I don't even know, it became my slogan was, I want the court to be transformational, not just operational. And I believe being on the bench, I have done that or tried to live by that as much as I can, whether that's individually or, working hand in hand with Judge Best and a number of our other judges who have that same mindset. Right now, if you see one of my flyers, it will be protecting the rights and the safety of our community, which is important. I think anytime you go into a courtroom, you want to make sure that the judge is listening, that the judge is assessing the law and the facts appropriately, and making sure that if you have rights that need to be upheld, that is being done. And granted, we know there might be some competing things that go on there, but that's a big deal. And we know when you say rights now, that means a lot of things for people. And obviously safety. And again, that goes to our conversation earlier. Just because I'm, a Democrat doesn't mean I don't want my neighborhood to be safe, that I don't want my child to be able to come home, my wife to be able to come home. My wife's a school teacher. My daughter is a CMS student, 4th grade. So, I want them to be safe as well. And so I think people need to understand that a lot of these things, we have a lot of the same positions. and then we can branch off from there, obviously. But that's what you want in your judge, and I know that's
well. I think anyone who watches this show, regardless of what state, you probably have a race like this in your locality. Absolutely. A judicial race, a Supreme Court race, and those are very important because think of it. If it wasn't for those 64 judges that did not allow the lawsuits from former President Trump, we could be in a different country.
Yeah.
And so it's important that we have judges in place as a check and balance for us. Here in North Carolina, if we did not have the Supreme Court that we have, oh my goodness, we'd be South Carolina. So, I guess we'll just end. But we love South Carolina, by the way.
Wait, so. One thing I want to jump in both, hearing both of y'all speak in the last hour or so, is that I feel that I would be confident you both have a public servant's heart, that you realize what's at stake, that you actually care about your community. Clearly, to me, whenever I vote for somebody, that's what I want to know. Did you get into this to be a public servant, or did you get into this to be the next stepping step? Do you want to do this for fame and fortune, or whatever, or it's just a job to you, or do you have that public service thing? Because at the end of the day, being a judge is probably not an easy job at all. It's much easier to get on a podcast and just yabber around like I do. There's absolutely zero qualifications to do this. Clearly, we know Joe Rogan can do it on a daily basis. But anyway, like with the COVID rumors were going around and people were getting their COVID education from YouTube, I said, look, I've got a show on YouTube. There is 0.0 qualifications.
Don't listen to us.
On YouTube. A 14-year-old gamer can get on there and game for an hour.
That's right.
There is no vetting purpose whatsoever process. But unlike that, judges, for example, not only do you have the educational levels and the training to be doing what you're doing, but also too the test of time. Y'all both have been at this a long time, and obviously public service is very important. And people should think about that when they cast a vote for YouTube, which I encourage them to do. This is opinion of mine, and I'll be voting for one of you for sure. And I just don't know which district I'm in, but I think I'm in Puritan's district.
We'll look it up there.
But the other thing is that no matter where you're sitting and watching this show, if you're in any of the 50 states, A, get educated about who you're going to vote, and B, you got to vote. Like,
yes, of course,
be part of the process, and help American democracy go forward for years to come.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, listen, I want to thank you, judges, and you're welcome to hang around, but we're going to switch to some of the other races around the state. But I do thank you so much for taking the time. I know your time is valuable. Here in North Carolina, early voting does start on Thursday, October 20th. October 20th. And of course, Election Day all around the country is November the 8th. So please, as Jenny said, get out there and vote. So, Jim, let's go ahead and switch. We're going to pause a second here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Y'all have a great rest of the
Thanks, y'all. Appreciate y'all.
I'm going to edit this part out. Thank y'all thank you so much.
No problem.
Ready, Jen?
Yep.
So let's go ahead and switch to the other elections that we have around the country. We only have about 10 minutes left, but there's about 6 states that are very important, and we'll do this in a faster round. Florida, Ohio, Georgia, Texas, Pennsylvania, and Arizona. Of course, North Carolina, but we talk about North Carolina all the time. So what do you guys think about Florida?
Well, I guess we should name the specific races we're talking about. So in Florida,
let's talk about the governor and the Senate, which would be DeSantis and
Charlie Crist,
and Valdenins and Rubio.
So I'll go first on that one. Of course, obviously, I very much support Charlie Crist against our favorite governor, one of our favorite governors, that shall not be named for the show. But anyway, I think the current governor is proven to be absolutely incompetent. To go on these maniacal social agenda deep ends and making teachers quit and scaring people with "Don't Say Gay" and all kinds of other misappropriations. They're flying the people to the Martha's Vineyard. I don't care which side of the aisle you vote on, to misappropriate $12 million for a publicity stunt is absolutely the opposite of public service.
Right.
Yep.
He should be in jail. Okay. He should have been arrested for that. For Val Demings, Chief Demings, she was in law enforcement for a long time in the greater Orlando area. Absolutely brilliant. Versus a MAGA mouth breather that has some significant disconnect with democracy. I think what you'll get in Val Demings is a lifetime public servant, somebody knows the law, knows how to conduct themselves, has a gravitas and a maturity that Florida deserves. They don't need it. They don't need a clown in that position.
Okay. Barb?
Well, I don't know too much about Florida.
Okay. How about any of the other states? Ohio, Georgia, Texas, Pennsylvania, Arizona.
I'm concerned about Georgia. All of a sudden, they're going to back Herschel Walker. So
I saw that.
I'm like, wait a minute. This is the party that, so now they've got two people that aren't running out there stumping for him, and they're settling for backing him up. This one person, I don't know who she is, she says, well, we're going to back him because we don't want to lose the seat. I'm like, that's the only reason you're backing him? But that seems to be the new trend. Vote, back him up now so we make sure we gain the seat or we keep the seat. Herschel Walker? I was expecting more people to come out of the woodwork in these key states where we find out that the men that are running actually paid for abortions for somebody. I'm just waiting. I thought people would be digging everywhere, but it's hard to get MIB information now, Ed, with some of the laws that are around. But I'm just kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop for certain people.
Well, don't you think, would you all agree, because we only have about 5 minutes left now, of all those states, Jen, Florida, Ohio, Georgia, Texas, Pennsylvania, Arizona, which one do you think is the most important to win, if we had to say that?
Oh, I think they're all important. Okay. Especially when you're talking about governorships and Senate seats. One, because, we have a 50-50 Senate right now. That means that, the tiebreaker goes to the Democrats because the vice president is the president of the Senate. So we actually 51-50 technically. Sure. But in lawmaking terms, it's a 50-50 Senate. And clearly to make more progress and honestly to keep certain things from happening. For all intents and purposes, nationally, abortion access is over. Dobbs decided that, and for us to have a cohesive national policy that protects reproductive access and reproductive rights, including birth control. It's not just abortion, but what's up for grabs, and the Dobbs decision is also the access to medical birth control, and who decides to get that, how it's distributed, and if it's even allowed to be distributed through employee medical plans is all up for debate. Just as the PrEP case in Texas, where an employer was allowed to deny access to PrEP to all their employees because the employer said it's against their religious beliefs in promoting homosexuality. Well, anytime that you protect somebody's access to medical care, and the person happens to be gay or lesbian or whomever in the LGBT community, everything that protects that life is promoting homosexuality in reality, because as long as they're alive, they're going to be gay. So it's a silly, you denying them the medical access to a life-protecting medicine. Clearly, you have a misinterpretation of your faith and or your misunderstanding about, as long as we protect LGBT lives, which is, we should protect all lives in our country. So what's on the line between MAGA Republicans and Democrats is that a vote for a MAGA Republican is a vote for Trump. If you want to go back to the days of 2017 and 2021 when he was president.
Sure.
That's what you want if you vote for a Republican on any level, local, state, or federal.
Yep.
Right.
If you if you like what you saw the last 18, 19 months, which was progress, and actually seeing some massively important legislation go through our national Congress, and seeing our country actually doing better, then make sure you vote for Democrats on every level. That's
so go ahead.
That's your choice.
No, I understand. We're over right now. So Barb,
but I just, with being in large groups of people over the past 2 weeks, I think it's so important for the people that watch and listen. I am shocked that people aren't aware that contraception could be taken away. And when I say that to people, they're like, what? I said, pay attention to what laws the Republican-run states are passing. That's the slippery slope. And then go, wait a minute, what are you talking about? And they're not even realizing it. And people are not paying attention. Early voting is starting. Illinois is early voting. We're early voting this week. So I think it's part of our job to say it isn't just abortion, ladies and gentlemen. It's the rest of your life. If you're a woman, if you make the wrong decision, other people are making decisions for your body from now on, and that's going to be the end of it. But gentlemen, back up your women. They could take contraception away. And then if you get somebody pregnant, you got child support payments for the rest of your life. And the shock on people's faces. Pay attention now. This is very, very critical.
Okay. Jen, real quickly, go ahead. Yeah, Jen, you have something to say?
If you've got a gay neighbor or a cis woman neighbor that is young, that's on contraception, or an older lady that needs to go on hormone therapy for changing life, no matter who it is, one party says the person and their medical people should make that decision. That's the Democrats. They're saying it always needs to be between that person and their medical practitioner. Republicans believe that that's not the case. That politicians should make that decision, and they should be able to legislate the medical industry. And so if you want to be able to make your own choices, and I'm talking about anything, no matter what it is, I much prefer for me to be able to talk to my personal medical practitioners and say, I would like to do this or this, and not have to worry about my doctor being put in jail.
Well, I think
being able to do what I want with my body.
Sure. I think, Jenny, you have said it all year long. And I think that,
for years.
And I think, Barbara, it's a very good point. I do think this close to the election, it's all going to be based upon who is, whether the Republican base comes out more, or the Democrats understand how serious this election is, as y'all have been saying. But I completely agree with you. What I'm telling my Republican family members is, if you want the Republican Party that you grew up with, don't vote for a MAGA Republican. Vote Democrat, because it'll at least give your party a chance to get rid of some of them.
Right.
But if you want the same craziness that you are sick of, then you're going to get that. And so now, if you're a Democrat,
it might get worse.
Exactly. Because we have learned, just when we say, oh, it can't get worse, yes, it can.
Yeah.
So this is such a serious, I know we've been saying this for a long, this is the most important election. This election is very important, 2024's election. And the reason it's so important is because
we the stepping stone for 2024. If certain things don't happen in this election, God help us for 2020.
So it is all it's everyone boots to the ground. Talk to your neighbors, get people out to vote as much as you can, and explain to people how this will impact you. I've been trying to say how it impacts people that us. Jenny has reminded me all the time that they're not just after transgender people, they're after me. And so in my family. And so, so it's important that we get that message out. Real quickly, Jen, because we're over 6 minutes now, I'm going to edit something.
Yeah. And just to be clear, it's really about listen to what they're saying and look at how the Supreme Court has ruled this year, not just this year, but in other years. And actually, in many cases, when it comes to religious, air quotes, freedom, we saw the Hobby Lobby case where they were able to deny contraception to all their employees on religious grounds. And that was several years ago during the Trump administration. A very clear and conservative message that we want to make decisions for people, which is the opposite of freedom and the opposite of democracy. And literally, you also have a MAGA Republican Party that is absolutely saying, in certain cases, if we lose, we're not going to concede. And we're talking about the party of January 6th. We're talking about people that, for the first time in our history, we have a major political party that says, in many cases, including like Carrie Lake in Arizona, says, she believes she can only win. But she's clearly stated several times on the campaign trail, I will not concede.
Well, that's why we need to tell her voters, don't even worry about voting, because it's going to, just don't vote.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that's a terrible message.
If you're a MAGA Republican, don't vote. You can't trust it. Don't vote. If you're a Democrat or a sane person, a Republican,
get out there and
vote. So, all right. With that said, I'm sure we'll get a bunch of posts on this this show, Jen.
Yeah.
So with that said, we do want to thank all of you for joining us on Coffee Pan Dulce. It's been a great show. Stay tuned for Jenny's show. I'm sure she's got a lot of great topics. And we're going to go around the Brady Bunch screen and tell us who you're going to be in the next week or so, in 30 seconds or less.
So I have my esports tournament this Saturday. So if you live in the greater Charlotte area or even the surrounding counties and it's drivable, I've been advertising all week that we're going to have an event at a local brewery. And I'm super excited. So that's going to be my happy space for the week. I get to do that.
Okay, good. I am finally get to stay home, and I'm happy. That's what I'm staying home. The first time in my life I experienced claustrophobia, and I did not like it one bit. So I'm glad to be home.
Because of the amount of people that were there? Is that what it was? It was just
wall-to-wall people. I got knocked 3 times. And I'm like,
gosh,
get me out of here.
Yeah, I don't like, I wouldn't have liked that.
Oh, no.
All right.
Was creepy.
All right. Well, I will be canvassing. I will be canvassing for candidates that I'm supporting. I'll be canvassing all weekend long. I'm doing everything I can because I don't want to wake up on November the 9th saying, if I had just done this. At least I know I did everything that I could, as much as I could. But anywho, with that said, and I had signed the pledge to accept the results of the election. So whatever happens, I'm going to accept. I just have to fight harder if it doesn't go my way. And if it does go our way, then I'm going to ensure that people vote again in 2024. So stay tuned for Jenny's show. We'll be right. Thank you. I guess I was going to say we'll be right back. So Jen, you got some music going on?
Oops.
Oh, excellent. It's Cano. Bye, y'all. See you next week. Howdy, everyone. I'm Christian Cano with the Coffee Pan Dulce Show. We're based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. And I just want to remind everyone that there's only about 22 days left to vote here in North Carolina. If you have not registered and if you are going to early voting may be underway right now, you do have, you can actually register the day of to vote. Also, grab someone who you know, a best friend, a neighbor, a family member, a tia, a tío, a mija, a mijo, someone. Grab someone to vote, create a plan. If you need more information about getting out to vote, look at the link below. There will be information that tells you how you can get out to vote and information. It's important that all of our Latinx families and all of our families get out to vote. This election is so important to all of us. So remember, get out to vote on November the 8th, and there's only about 22 days left. Thank you.
Next up, thanks for watching Coffee and Pan Dulce. Next up is Two Queers and a Truck. Stay tuned.